Matt, great to have you here. You've built and run tech companies for 30 years now, right? And now you're tackling a problem that my audience hits every week. All right. Everybody is producing more content with AI, and no one really trusts it enough to publish without a human babysitter. Now, I know for everybody out there, especially in the creative and writing space, you're going to scream out loud, but this is not that. I'm talking about companies that need to produce content to feed the algorithm that we all need to feed, all right? And so this is a little bit of a different scenario here. But at Markup AI, you had a survey going that shows clearly that 9 out of 10 companies use AI to generate content, and yet 80% still review everything by hand. And the process really crawls here. This is the new bottleneck, all right? That gap is why this conversation matters. And because, most leaders haven't heard of a concept that you call guardian agents. I love that. I love play on words. And so let's start with that. And tell me what you hear from teams who claim to trust AI, but still hover over the publish button. And what do teams admit when you speak with them?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Camille. It's good to see you. And the reality is that generative AI has turned content production on its head. So, content production for companies used to be low quantity, high quality. That's what happens when human writers and editors and lawyers get involved with content production. What generative AI does is is the opposite. It's a high quantity, questionable quality. And if you think about it, the generative models, which are incredibly powerful, are by nature predictive, right? I mean, that's how the transformer works. So the content that gets produced by models, even if you have good inputs and good prompts and everything else, has two things. One is it's not quite accurate all the time because it's predictive, it's not perfect. And the second is there's sort of, again, by definition of predictive models, there's a regression to the mean. It all kind of sounds the same, it all kind of looks the same. And if you've spent your years at an enterprise building a brand that you care about and building a voice and building a relationship with your customers, you don't want your content to look like everybody else's and sound like everyone else's, and you don't want it to be inaccurate. So the problem that all these large companies have, and not even large companies, even mid-sized companies, is from the top, the executive team said, use generative AI. We're going to get rid of all the content producers or get rid of 90% of the content producers because we don't need them anymore. Now we can just generate content. So they have many, many fewer people. They have much more content. So instead of X amount of content, large language models can produce 10X the amount of content, but the quality has gone down. So now there's a lack of trust in those organizations. And this concept that we all talk about in the AI world of human in the loop is meant to be human in the loop for exception processing. It's not meant to be human in the loop for everything. Otherwise, why bother with AI? So that's kind of like the dirty secret of enterprise use of AI for content production, which is that you're getting speed and scale out of it, but at a loss of quality with fewer humans to check it.
Oh, and so you mentioned the exception checking, right? That's how it should look like when it comes to
That's how it should be.
right. But as you said, creation got faster. Reviews slow this whole thing down. We know what it should look like based on what you just said, but what does it actually look like? What does that slowdown look like behind the scenes? And how do companies transition from one to the other?
Well, it looks like what I call the Ferrari with bicycle brakes. So
Okay.
there's not enough check and balance to deal with the power of the engine. So so think about it as kind of a compliance nightmare. Let's say you're a bank, let's say you're a pharmaceutical company, or let's even say you're a public company in any vertical. You have thousands of employees that are using not just one model. Even if you said as a company, we're a Google shop, we're standardizing on Gemini, we're a Microsoft shop, we all use Copilot, right? You and I both know that employees are going to use what employees are going to use. They all have ChatGPT. A lot of them have Claude. A ton of them use Perplexity. So all these different models are feeding in to the content machine. And if you have thousands of employees using, 10 different models, and you're trying to use humans to catch regulatory violations because you're a bank or you're a pharmaceutical company or you're a public company, you just can't do like it just doesn't work. There is no way that the bicycle brakes can stop the Ferrari. So so that's the problem, right? That's the operational bottleneck that
Mm.
that companies are starting to run into. So what we're seeing all these large companies do is say, "Oh my gosh, we have to completely reinvent the content supply chain and think about orchestrating new workflow to get content from concept to publication in a way that is both scalable and safe."
Mm. And since we kind of brushed on it, and off camera, we talked about AI governance. This is a topic that's going to be huge in the next couple of years, I think, because the wild, wild west is going to be reined in a little bit, where, shadow AI, everybody bringing their own models into work. I think this is going to change dramatically. And I think that's where companies like yours will help. But like currently, I see that no one really owns the oversight. IT says that it's marketing's department. The marketing says they're pointing
Absolutely.
at compliance, and then legal gets involved as well. Obviously, that depends on the industry they're in. But what do you see from an AI integration standpoint? What breaks when no one is in charge? What is the problem, at least from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, this is the huge problem of this sort of confusion of ownership and what you do about it. And look, this is not new. This happens anytime there's a new technology. So if you set the technology team aside for a minute, what should happen is that content is owned by a business owner. It could be marketing, it could be HR on a career site, it could be customer success, it could be product producing documentation, it could be whoever owns the chatbot or Zendesk. Like there are lots of business owners who own content. And then there's usually a legal team or a compliance team that, has whatever manual guardrails or processes they have in place. What happens every time there's a new technology is all of a sudden the technology team becomes a more important player inside the organization because the business unit, the business owners don't really understand the technology yet. I saw this happen in 1995, 6, 7, 8, 9 with the internet. That all
Mm.
of a sudden, right, the website, which was new in 1995 or 1996, replaced the brochure. And the brochure didn't have technology involved in it. It
Mm.
had the writers of the brochure and the legal team. But all of a sudden, there's a website. So now IT is a major stakeholder at the table. And the problem with most IT departments, even if they're really high quality developers, even if they think they sort of understand business requirements, is they don't live in the business the same way that the business users and in this case, authors and editors live. So all of a sudden, there is this third player. You have sort of fragmentation of ownership, and in large enterprises, that can be really detrimental because first of all, you have if nobody owns it, then it doesn't get done, and if everybody owns it, nothing gets done
Hmm.
because everyone thinks someone else is in charge of it. Or worse, someone thinks they're in charge of it, but they don't really have the business knowledge or the tools at their hands to be to be in charge of it. So this concept that you and I were talking about ahead of time about the guardian agent, which is a clever play on words, and I cannot assume credit for it. Credit goes to the head of, I believe he's the head of research for Gartner, Daryl Plummer, who sort of coined the term guardian agents. The concept of the guardian agent is that the only thing strong enough to monitor and oversee AI is AI.
Mm.
But the reality is you can't have one particular model be responsible for both output and checking the output because the model has whatever inputs it has, so it can't check its own output correctly. So if you think about it just as a user, what happens if you're in ChatGPT, you ask it a question, you know the answer is wrong, and you point out the error to ChatGPT. What does ChatGPT say? It says, "You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Let me think about this in light of the facts that you just put into my machine," right? So a model can't check its own output. You have to have a guardian agent where it's a bespoke AI system in charge of checking another AI system. And the AI system is built differently. It's not like you're just using one LLM to look at another. You actually have to have an AI system that has a mix of predictive functionality as well as deterministic functionality. And when you put all of that together, you get the guardian agent. So while Gartner coined the term guardian agent, our business at Markup AI is what we call content guardian agents. There will be guardian agents in charge of security. There will be guardian agents in charge of all sorts of things. But the content guardian agent is the system that's specifically designed to help companies who are using AI to produce content make sure that that content is safe and scalable, and that you don't have to find yourself hiring an army of writers, editors, lawyers, and prompt engineers, which takes away all the cost savings and all the benefit that you get out of using a large language model in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to make sense. And you see it across industries, starting with war, right? I mean, there's not going to be an army that will be able to defeat an army that uses AI without using AI themselves, in a sense, whether this is on a strategic level or not.
And
Um,
and and to continue your war analogy and my earlier technology analogy, it's not just AI, right? It's drones, right?
yeah,
What's the best thing to
exactly.
fight a drone? Another drone.
Yeah, yeah. And on top of that, I don't know if you saw that headline a couple days ago. I think it was a headline that said that insurance companies are trying to avoid paying claims that are caused through AI. So errors and omissions or something like that. So I see there's a whole different dimension as well. You brought in legal as well, and that goes into governance and all that type of stuff. You know, from your perspective, maybe talking to companies, what's their current worries? Do you see that they understand the need already, or are they still overwhelmed with AI integration as a whole? Where is like the average CEO these days?
I think they're pretty early in understanding the problems, right? They were first to get the efficiency gain and first to mandate efficiency. And what we see in these large companies is, and this is again, it's nothing new, but large companies, when the people at the top see a benefit of something, they jump all over it. And large companies, kind of by design, have a lot of people that are in the business of putting sand in the gears,
Hmm.
right? Of slowing things down. And they're not doing it because they're, mean-spirited, right? There's someone who's in charge of security. And right, that person's in charge of ISO certifications or SOC or compliance and everything. Right, their job is to poke holes in things. Their job is to make sure that the company is safe. It's the same thing with with lawyers. And then there are other people in the organization who have different metrics that they're managed on, like quality. So the people at the top, right away, they get the efficiency benefit. They say everybody's got to use this. There are a bunch of people in the middle that say, hang on a second. If we're going to use it, let's be smart about how we use it. And it usually takes a while for that to bubble back up to the top. So what we're seeing, if you look at the classic Jeffrey Moore, crossing the chasm map, which he calls the technology adoption life cycle, where where it's a big giant bell curve, right? The left side of it is visionaries, early adopters. Then there's what's called the chasm. Then you get to Main Street, right? So you get to early majority, late majority, and then laggards on the other side of the bell curve.
Hmm.
The thing about AI is not only in one place in the bell curve. I forget who said this once, but they said the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet.
Hmm.
So even within an enterprise, you will see people that are already across the chasm. They're in the early majority. No one's really in the late majority yet, but there are a huge number of people that are already committed to agentic technology and to generative technology. They're using it every day, left, right, and center. Um, Even if the enterprise as a whole is still left of the chasm and they're still kind of early adopter or innovator. But if you think about sort of where decision makers are, where senior executives are, they may be in a very different place in that than than people across the organization, where they haven't quite seen all the risks yet. They haven't been pointed out, all those problems. And it can be the other way around. It can be that there's one company I'm on the board of where the CEO is already in the majority. He's way across the chasm
Hmm.
for his own use of AI, but he's got people in the organization that are focused on compliance that are on the left side of the chasm. So we're in this really interesting phase of the evolution of AI and disruption that comes from AI. It's just not even.
Hmm. Well, let me know if that CEO needs somebody to help him out with AI integration. More than happy to. In fact, actually, I noticed this a little bit off the side. It's really more of a culture adoption than technology, because the technology is there. It's pretty straightforward for the most part, but it's really people. Um,
No, that's right. Look, and that's true of any technology, right?
yeah.
The people first, but but technology matures over time, and the way that people use it mature over time. Um, and I don't know when MCP became available as a protocol and people started setting up MCP servers. That could have been a few years ago. Um, but that's now something that users are starting to think about. They're like, oh, I can connect my AI to other AI. Right? It's sort of the API equivalent of the new generation. So there's both cultural adoption and there's technical sophistication of adoption that does things like speed up the benefits or put the guardrails around it so it's more safe.
So if you could, just from a super top level perspective, when a company signs up with Markup AI and they want to use the Guardian agents, uh, what does that look like? What does the training look like? Again, just top level, and what does the content creation look like? And what happens throughout the process? What's the best setup for a company there?
Yeah, so we've built our engine to be as intuitive and as simple as possible. So when you adopt Markup AI, making the engine work so it's customized for your enterprise takes minutes and you can do it by yourself. You don't need like a big onboarding or a consulting team. You can upload your company's brand and style guide. You can upload your company's terminology dictionary if you have one. Soon you'll be able to upload your company's policy handbooks, compliance guidelines, anything like that, which our system ingests and splits apart and decomposes and instantly knows what to do so that your instance of Markup AI in a matter of minutes is custom to your enterprise. Then the second thing you have to do is you have to put it to work in the enterprise. And they're sort of broadly speaking, two ways of doing that. One is you can connect to the system through our MCP server or through APIs or through low code options like Zapier or N8N. All of those things let people inside the enterprise use the engine and connect it to different systems they have. So if they have a homegrown system that does content supply chain or publishing gateways, et cetera, they can literally just snap us into it right away. The other way to use us is as an authoring assistant, where you actually need to use us inside of another application. So think about Microsoft Word or Google Docs or Figma or Adobe. And for there, we have a whole bunch of integrations that are built out for our engine. So they're an off-the-shelf version for you, including a universal Chrome or Chromium plugin. So it kind of works in any web application. So whether you're building it into your own application, whether you're using it inside of other applications, whether you even use things in batch job, like if you think about sort of like an old school concept of a cron job, you could use us and configure us in about 5 minutes to say, hey, anytime a new document shows up in this repository, whether it's a GitHub repo a SharePoint drive, a Google Drive file, whatever your content repository or DAM is. Anytime a new document shows up there, check it. And shoot back the author comments in Slack that flag for them high risk problems in the document.
Mm.
So there are lots of different ways. The point for us was to create a very powerful engine, simple to configure and flexible to implement.
And in practice, what departments or teams, what are the people that would be the closest touch point to your system? Would it be marketing then, or because it's a mix, right? It's
It,
a
it's a, it's a
marketing,
it's it's a
IT,
broad
legal.
mix. Yeah,
Yeah.
content. So you can think about sort of content creators. And then you can think about kind of service providers inside the company, and they
Hmm.
can all use us. So on content creators can come literally out of any department. People write marketing content. The HR team's responsible for the career site. The customer success team is responsible for help and chatbot and knowledge base. There's going to be the product team is in charge of product documentation. It's sort of open-ended use. Any of those authors can use a system like ours either when they're authoring or in batch mode to check whole repositories of documents. A legal team or an IT team would use us also in a different way to sort of build us into their business process. So they're looking. So one of the things our system does is it scores documents, and it either gives you low, medium, high, sort of red, yellow, green risk indicators. It can even give you a 0 to 100 granular score if you're looking at very specific things. So any team can implement it in different ways. But it's really designed to make sure that the content quality is high so that when it gets to the legal team for review or it gets to an IT team, there's not very much left to do with it. And that the process of writers using large language models, producing high quality content becomes a lot faster, easier, and cheaper.
I wanted to ask you a somewhat personal question from based on your experience. You know, you've built what, like four companies in the past, and what did these years of experience and your wisdom teach you about this relatively new application, which is AI output, and how do you think enterprises should control AI output personally? What do you see versus what do you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, the theme that I would go with is governance as competitive advantage.
Hmm.
And if you think again, sort of about the arc of technology, um, it always ends up being that trust matters and quality matters. And companies that understand that concept early and build it into their systems and processes by design do better in the end because it's always harder to retrofit that stuff on the back end, right? Once the genie is out of the bottle. So, the different businesses I built over the years have been in really different spaces: the movie business, the email business, the recruiting business, now the content business. And all of them have elements of this problem of, sort of quality and trust. And governance is a competitive advantage. Governance by design, just build it in up front so you don't have to worry about it as your system scales. One of the companies I ran was in the email business. Email is a really powerful communication tool, rife with trust problems, right? Spam and phishing are like everybody's scourge. And if you go back 20 years or 25 years, the companies that got ahead of those things, that did permission marketing instead of spam, for example, were ones that won in the end because the quality was always there and they weren't burning and churning through their customers as a result. So AI is going to be no different than anything, the web, email, social, etc., where quality upfront and attention to that upfront is going to be so much better than trying to scramble in 2 years after you've already damaged your reputation to say, no, 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 we got it now. We figured it out.
That's going to be an uphill battle. Yeah. You mentioned it briefly earlier. You know, Gartner says that guardian agents will be the standard soon. Two questions on that. what are the other areas of business where you see that happening? You guys are doing it specifically for content. And what has to change inside of companies for that to become a reality?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think security is going to be a huge one. It's the first thing that you run into when you're trying to sell AI into a large enterprise, is right, the infosec team. And the infosec team first, they want to make sure that their data doesn't train other people's models, and that's fine. But they go through a really complex process of evaluating it. Um, infosec and IT teams love taking things in-house. They're always skeptical of public cloud. The models themselves are public in a way that public cloud isn't even public. Um, I think things around security and data protection are probably a huge frontier for Guardian agents, just like content is a huge frontier for Guardian agent. That's the first thing I would say about sort of other areas of Guardian agent. Um, and then, sorry, your second question was sort of what makes it a reality inside of
Yeah,
organizations.
yeah. What does
Yeah,
have to change inside of the companies to get there?
yeah. I mean, I think there are a couple of things. I think the first is that that companies need to follow the last conversation we had, which is sort of governance as a competitive advantage, and sort of think about quality up front as opposed to just sort of getting high on the benefits. Like, hey, we can reduce staff in this area by 90% is great, but are you really willing to do that in a way that's sloppy and that compromises your organization? So the companies really need to make that mindset shift to think about both things. Um, and I would say the other thing that's really important is the concept we talked about a few minutes ago of having like single owner as opposed to diffusion of ownership, but also having the company's knowledge and the company's standards codified, so that it's not just a single owner, but that there's a single source of truth.
Hmm.
And that if a company cares about its brand, that's codified somewhere. If it cares about its terminology, it's codified somewhere. If it cares about ethical, reputational standards, policy, et cetera, it's codified somewhere. Because ultimately, technology works off of data, and it doesn't work off of instinct, and it doesn't work off of things that are in people's heads.
Wow, that's a lot of good insight, I think. Matt, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. If people want to find out more about you and Markup AI, how do they get in touch? Where do they find you?
I am Matt at markup.ai. It's about as easy as it comes. They could certainly go to markup.ai and sign up for a free subscription. Everything's in eval early access mode right now, so it doesn't cost anything to grab an API key and start playing around with it. But feel free to email me directly, Matt at markup.ai.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here on the AI Adopters Club and hope to see you soon again.
All right, thanks, Camille. Appreciate it.
Thank you.